Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video, where I'm going to be talking about why the Crimson Isles update was a perfect Hypixel Skyblock update. Just note, I won't be going over every single piece of this update, because the video will be about 3 or 4 times as long, but if you want to see me do a full breakdown of every single piece of this update, let me know, because this video is just going to be covering like the main 5 or 6 pieces. So, yeah, let's get right into it and not waste any more time. It's only right if we start the video with the most popular part of the Crimson Isles update, that of course being Kuudra. Fun trip down memory lane quickly, because most of you might have forgotten or never knew at all that the Kuudra fight used to be very different, being all based around a higher platform that used to stand on, and you would shoot the cannons at the Kuudra tentacles, and then in the second phase you would shoot Kuudra and the tentacles. Also back then there were only 2 tiers, base and hot, and the god rolls looked very different back then than they do now. See, this was very well executed by Hypixel, because they realized that this style was not good. It was not great. It was okay, it was somewhat fun the first couple times, but got repetitive really quickly. And they decided to fully revamp the boss fight at the release of the rest of the tiers. Because now, as everyone knows, there are 5 tiers of Kuudra, being base, hot, burning, fiery, and infernal. The Kuudra fight itself is very different depending on the tier that you are doing, because tier 1 to tier 2, every fight starts with the same. You start with getting the chests out of the lava, and then you build the ballista. But the difference is usually the damage step. So on tier 1s and tier 2s, you need to fuel the ballista, and then hit orbs into Kuudra to keep him from going under the lava. 1 ballista shot will kill him from full health. And tier 1, and then tier 2, the ballista will do half of his health. And tier 3 and tier 4 is all about stunning Kuudra, so having someone go in Kuudra and then basically mine blocks to stun him, and having the rest of the party shoot him, usually with terms, just because you need, it's based on hits, so you need a lot of hits, usually terms, preferably with duplex. And tier 5 has the same kind of features, but then enters a fully new phase, kind of like how M7 has the Dragon's phase at the end of the that Floor 7 does not have. We're going to move away from the boss for a moment, so let's talk about some of the gear that you can drop from Kuudra. First of all, the armor, which almost all of the armor is used in some metas around Skyblock. Aurora being the best RCM set, Crimson being the best melee set in the game, and Terror being the best range set in the game. On top of all that, this armor from chests come with attributes on it, some of which is really strong when paired with the right armor set. For example, on Aurora, you can get Mana Pool, which gives you more base mana, and Mana Regen, which lets you regen mana faster. Each one of the sets has attributes that work best on them, and some of the better overall attributes are Magic Find, increasing Magic Find, Dominance, which increases damage while you are at full health, Lifeline, which increases your damage and defense when you are under 20% health, and Veteran, which increases your combat wisdom. Having this many meta armor sets makes Kuudra very good to grind for money. On top of the other drops, there are Inferno 1 books, Fatal Tempo 1 books, Attribute Shards, which let you upgrade that attribute on any armor piece that you have. There's Wheel of Fates, which is kind of like a Kismet Feather for the actual pieces themselves, so lets you reroll the attributes on your piece in hopes for a better roll. And then there's the entire Molten set, which you can also roll attributes on, and are also very helpful for things like Slayers, because you can get Magic Find and Veteran on them, which makes grinding them very easy. On top of that, the chests will always give you Crimson Essence and Kuudra Teeth, both of which are used for upgrading the armor sets. Now, coming back to the boss itself, I feel like it's just really well made. For now, we're just going to talk about tier 3, because that's the tier I have the most experience with, because I don't want to start talking about tier 5, because I have not done it. It's out of my domain, it's out of my range to talk about. So the boss starts with you and your team of 3 others needing to grab 6 chests from the lava using a lava fishing rod to move the chest closer, and then picking up the chest without being grabbed by the Kuudra tentacles that are in the lava. Once the team finishes grabbing the chests, you will build the ballista. Both these tasks can be sped up using perks in the perk shop that can be bought every run from getting tokens. And you get the tokens from killing mobs, because Kuudra spawns mobs all the time. And on kill, they will give you and your teammates tokens, which you can spend in the shop to help you speed up the run. Finally, after you build the ballista, one person will stun Kuudra, the rest will damage him until he dies. I feel like it's a very simple but very well made boss fight, with good phases and a good design, and with a lot of the best gear in the game coming from Kuudra. I feel like overall it really adds to how the Crimson Isles is such a good update, because so many of these armor sets are used for so many things. For example, Crimson Armor is the best for basically every Slayer. Aurora is the best for any form of RCM that you need to do anywhere, whether it be on the Crimson Isles itself, because they'll have a lot of health. Could be Spider Slayer, which you use RCM, so it's meta for that. And just any other part of the game where you'd be right-clicking, which can also be useful for Slayers as well, like if you do RCM E-Man. So overall, having these sets all be useful. There's one more set, but it's not really useful, so that's why it's not being mentioned, but that is Fervor. It's another thing. It's basically like a healer tank set, but it's not really nearly as good as the other three, so it didn't get mentioned in this part of the video. But that's all for Kuudra. Let's move on. Okay, moving on from Kuudra, I will move through this section a lot quicker, but I still need to bring it up for talking about how good the Crimson Isles update is. Those two being factions and mini-bosses, because they work really well together. So for the factions, just having two different options to choose whichever one is better for you at whatever stage of the game you're at. For example, you should choose the Barbarian faction if you are earlier in the game, because the starting quest is a lot easier to do. And you should choose Mage if you are mid-game or later, as Kuudra keys will become a lot cheaper from the NPC shop, because Mycelium is cheaper than red sand. So, on top of that, the idea behind daily tasks in the community center for each faction, and getting extra rep from killing the mini-bosses in Kuudra every day, I feel like is a very good baseline idea by itself as well, because it makes people have to come back every day to actually grind and make progression in this update, which some people like, some people don't, but I feel like with how they went about it in Crimson Isles, it's very well done. Speaking of mini-bosses, so we're going to go back to mini-bosses for a second. They're also, I feel like, very well made, and being strong enough to make them somewhat fun to kill and not just repetitive, because Hypixel has tried to do mini-bosses in the past, and they never really work out all that well. The main example I'm looking at is Arachne. It's a cool boss fight by itself, but it's not really strong enough for it to last long enough to feel like a proper fight. But on top of just killing these bosses, they also have some of the better items in the game that you can drop from them, or you get items to craft them. And they're still used in some top metas, for example, the Ragnarok Axe, the Fire Freeze Staff, and the Fire Veil Wand. The Ragnarok Axe being the best utility item in the game by far. The Fire Freeze Staff being used in the M3 meta to stun the Professor. And the Fire Veil Wand being used for basically any normal RCM usage. So I also do love how seamless these two parts of the Crimson Isles pair together, because they do fit really well and kind of go like at hand with each other. Also, I love the idea of having 5 different mini-bosses spread out around the island. So you have the Mage Outlaw, the Barbarian Duke, Ashfang, Blade Soul, and the Magma Cube boss. Each one that you have to fight a little different. Some are better to fight with a Term, some are better to fight with a Hype, and some just Ashfang. It's best if you get both. So I like how each boss is not fought directly the same, but can all be killed slightly different to be more efficient. Fishing in Skyblock before the Crimson Isles update was a huge pain, because at that point the highest fishing level that you needed at the time to unlock a new mob was fishing 26 for the Grim Reaper. And the best way to get XP was to grind water fishing and do Jerry events and spooky fishing whenever they were on. But now with the Crimson Isles update, they made lava fishing, which starts at fishing 27, and made grinding fishing levels all the way up to 50 be quite bearable. Still taking a bit of time, but being tons faster than they used to be. On top of that, they made 9 new fishing mobs for lava fishing, also added 3 new fishing armor sets, and a new line of fishing rods that only worked for lava, which also come with attributes on them. Some of them can be very helpful for fishing, mainly fishing speed and double hook being the best for normal fishing, increasing both fishing speed and giving you a chance to catch 2 sea creatures instead of 1. The overall fishing progression is very good to play through. The annoying part of fishing now is getting up to fishing 27, because lava fishing makes fishing very fun. And you can also get a good amount of money from fishing. And they also, I was very grateful for this. They added a decently hard to kill sea creature, being Lord Jabus. Him kind of acting as the final boss of fishing mobs, being unlocked at fishing 45. He is a huge creature with 100 million health and multiple phases. And he also has the best fishing drop in the game, the radioactive vial, which upgrades the flying fish pet to mythic, which makes it the best fishing pet in the game. If you're using the Magma Lord fishing set, of course, which also drops from Jabus. Overall, I don't know if I change anything about how they made fishing. I feel like this is very well made. And very good to make the progression from a boring skill actually be quite fun when actually grinding it. And it's always great to see when they release an update and have the actual most powerful mob in that give you the best items to do that skill. Feel like it should be that way for most things, but sometimes it's not. But that's one of the things that this update does very well, especially between Kuudra and fishing. Making it the fact that the armor and stuff that you get from it is the best for anything else. For example, the Magma Lord fishing set, best fishing set in the game. Crimson armor, Terror armor, Aurora armor, best for what they do. Which is always very good to have as one update, to have a ton of different meta changing things released with it, which I feel like really adds to the overall creativity and perfection of the Crimson Isles. With the Crimson Isles update, not only did they make fishing progression fun, they also added something else fishing. Of course, I am talking about trophy fishing, one of the weirder parts of Skyblock when you think about it, but it's also done really well. Like I talked about with normal fishing, there's attributes that can really boost trophy fishing rates, main ones being fishing speed and trophy hunter, which give you a higher chance to catch trophy fish and more fishing speed. But with all this being said, the part of the Crimson Isles, even with a max setup, will still take you a long while, which with how Skyblock plays is a really good thing for the game, with 4 tiers of trophy fish, diamonds being the highest, with base odds of 1 in 500, and with there being 18 trophy fish total you need to get diamond. This can take a long while. I feel like people always talk about trophy fishing as a kind of bad part of this update, but in my eyes, it's always nice to see something in Skyblock that people can't finish in a couple days. On top of that, trophy fishing can still be alright for some lower level players, because as long as you have fishing 27, you can catch trophy fish and getting to silver trophy fish hunter is not all that hard and gives you an okay talisman for some more magical power. Trophy fishing, again, kind of being a nice little addition on top of regular fishing, I feel like also adds to the normal fishing value, because once again, the best loot from normal fishing will carry over to trophy fishing, at least in the sense of the rods being the Hellfire being best, and having specialized attributes that can directly help this, and specialized enchants as well that directly help with trophy fishing. On top of that, there's also specialized bait and a couple other things that can make trophy fishing a lot easier. But even still, with all of the maxed out stuff, the odds of getting a diamond trophy fish only go from 1 in 500 to 1 in 380 or 338. Meaning that it's still going to take you a long while, and I think people usually estimate that trophy fishing takes about somewhere in the range of about 100 hours with average luck to finish. Which, again, is always good. I kind of put this in the same boat as, getting Cat 50 or something like that. Something that, takes a while to actually do is always good for an update, so there's more longevity in it, and just more for you to consistently do. Finally, saving one of the best for last, we have Blaze Slayer. Blaze Slayer, I would say, is my favorite part of the Crimson Isles update, and a part of that might just be that I have not played much Kuudra, or that I just really enjoy Slayers. but this boss is a fair bit better than the rest of the Slayers out there. From overall design of the boss, needing to use the Slayer daggers, so having two different swords that you switch throughout the boss, and both having their own abilities to make the boss feel really smooth, and just the fact that you need two specific weapons also makes it a tiny bit harder to get into, which some see as a negative, but I see it as a positive mainly, just because having it be a little bit more expensive to get into doing tier 4s also makes it that it's going to be profitable for a fair bit longer than most things. For example, I'm going to use E-Men as the example here. Enderman Slayer is, it's decently expensive nowadays, but it's not that expensive or that hard to get into, which has led to it only being about 20 to 30 million coins an hour at best. I think it's around 20 to 25, which Blaze, I believe, is currently still upwards of closer to 50 mil an hour. Now, the one caveat to this is that there's not one main drop that you can get from this Slayer like there is from the rest. For example, like there's no Overflux, there's no Judgment Core, there's no one main drop. The most profitable singular drop being the high-class Archfiend die, which is basically just aggressive gambling. But overall, it's a very fun boss with loads of profit to be had. On top of this, they added quite a few new Slayer items, most of which, like most Slayers, are quite niche in that they only really help Blaze Slayer, which is very common for Slayer drops and items. But the main item that you can craft from Blaze Slayer drops is the SOS Flare. Now, some of you might come at me and be like, oh, that's the Inferno minions. Well, you craft the Inferno minions through Blaze Slayer, okay? So the SOS Flare is the best deployable in the game for survivability, and while the Plasma Flux is a little bit better for damage, the SOS Flare is half the price, and only a little worse than the Plasma for damage only, but it is better for overall survivability and health gain. So the SOS Flare has become a very commonly used item around Skyblock, and has been one of my main points around a lot of these parts of the game, is that items for a big update like this should be used in other metas around the game. For example, like we've been through multiple times, the fishing items, best for fishing in the game, the Kuudra armor being best for a lot of the game, and then now we have a deployable as well that is now better than the current best at the time, and is currently sitting at half the price. Which I feel like, again, that really kind of ties an update together, because even if you're not thinking about it, a lot of the items you use in Skyblock every day are very helpful, and a lot of them come from this update, which is the main thing that the Crimson Isles does very well. The last section will be very quick. How can early game players, mid game players, and late game players benefit from the Crimson Isles? So for early game players, you can join a faction and then start doing tier 1 and tier 2 Kuudra, which themselves are not very good for money, but just unlocking Crimson Armor and Aurora are very good sets, because even Crimson in its base form is better than Shadow Assassin Armor outside of dungeons, and is a lot quicker of an unlock than grinding through dungeons to get Shadow Assassin. Mid-game players, depending on how progressed they are, should roughly start getting the hype around this point, so they should be able to start doing tier 3 and tier 4 Kuudra, which still makes really good coins per hour. It's probably anywhere from the range of 30 to 40 mil an hour if I had to guess. That's not a guarantee, that's just a estimate, which from that stage of the game is pretty good, and most of the setup is transferable into other parts of the game, so it's just kind of an added bonus that you can grind it. Also, if you have the levels for it, you can start working on the early Crimson Isles fishing and trophy fishing for some nice Skyblock XP and money. And finally, late to endgame players can start doing tier 5 Kuudra and efficient Blaze Slayer, which are currently two of the best money-making methods in the game. They can finish the rest of the Crimson Isles fishing, and they can also go for the Diamond Trophy Hunter, which can take a while, but is a lot of Skyblock XP for that late in the game. Having someone at every stage in the game be able to grind one update, and it being very useful at every stage, I feel like is really what makes this update good, because there's so much to do that this video doesn't even cover like 60% of the things that you can grind on Crimson Isles. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, because a lot of effort went into making this video. Also, let me know down in the comments if you want me to do a full overview of every part of Crimson instead of just highlighting the main points, because that video will probably be about twice as long as this one will end up be, if not slightly longer. But I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace.